Hello, today is week 14 and it's plot week. So we're going to be talking about plot. And the way I want to describe what a plot in your story is by talking about a pirate map. I'm sure you've drawn them for yourself and maybe seen them in other books. But if you haven't, a pirate map is just a piece of paper and you got the starting point and then you got the treasure. And you probably noticed that on a pirate map, the line from the starting point to the treasure is not a straight line. It usually squiggles around and through here, through that, and finally to here. And there's going to be obstacles on the line to make it hard to reach the treasure map. So maybe you'll have a storm at the beginning, and then you'll have some sirens, which are mermaids that sing and lure pirates to their death. And then maybe there's a giant monster just before the treasure chest. And so basically, that's your storyline. And plot is the pace at which it moves, and it's your storyline. And it's all things concerning your storyline. So basically, it's your storyline. And so some people, when they write a story, they'll have the monsters, the obstacles, everything stopping the main character from reaching the goal, just to make the story interesting. That's why they'll put it in there. And that's a good reason, because if you don't have obstacles, if it isn't hard for your character to reach the goal, then it's going to be a boring story. But really what you want your obstacles to do are change your character. So I'm going to give you an example. So the main character wants to reach the goal, but he needs to have a character flaw. So what's wrong with him? Let's say that he has friends, but he doesn't care about them at all. He doesn't like them. He doesn't hang out with them. They try to be friends with him, but he's just a jerk. And so each obstacle he can't do alone. And this is how you would make the obstacles change your character, is you would make him realize each time that he can't complete it or defeat it by himself, that he needs his friends, so that at the end, when the biggest obstacle happens, his friends are there for him to help him, and he doesn't need to do it alone, and he defeats the monster and finds a treasure. And so that's an example. And so basically, I want you to think again. 2 weeks ago, I told you that the main things in a story you need are the main problem and the main character and how they connect. And so I'm going to describe that a little more this time. So basically, you want it to be like there's glue or bubble gum stuck on your hands, and this is the main problem, and this is your main character. And the main problem, far in the distance, sometimes it's closer to the main character, maybe they're within reach, and sometimes they're further apart. So for example, when they're very close, you might have a storm hit the main character so that they go far again and he's far away from his goal. Or maybe his friend dies and so he doesn't want to reach the goal anymore. He doesn't have motivation. So that's how you always want your main problem and your main character to be interacting, like it's stretching apart from each other and then coming back together until finally you'll meet in the middle at the very end. So another example for plot, actually a diagram for a plot, which is just like a picture to describe words, would be in a triangle. So first, you have the intro right here, and that's where you introduce your characters, and you just introduce the problem. So you say, this is Jack, he wants to reach the treasure. And then right here is at the very bottom of the pyramid, you have the spark, which sets your character off to want to find the treasure, to reach the goal. Maybe he finds out his sister is dying, so he needs to find the treasure now to be able to buy medicine for her. And that's what's going to set him up this hill. And what this hill is, I call them steps, and they're basically just situations that get harder and harder and harder as they get closer to the top, that keep impacting your character and growing your character. They're just hard obstacles. And they get harder and harder until they reach the very top, which is basically like the boss battle, which is the most important situation. And it doesn't have to be an actual monster. Maybe the most important situation is when he realizes he actually needs his friends to defeat the monster, and then he asks his friends for help, and they all come and defeat the monster. That could be the very top battle, or they get the ships off the rocks somehow with the help of the mermaids. You never know. It could be anything, but it has to be the most important thing that is the battle of all battles, and that resolves the problem entirely, or mostly. And why I say mostly is there's then going to be a short hill downwards in your plot, and that's where you tie up all the ends. So that means that, say he defeats the final monster at the very top, and then the short way down in your plot is him finding the treasure, going back to his mom or his sister, buying the medicine, she gets healed and lives. And that is a plot entirely. And so, before we go to reading recommendation and your project, I'm going to say what's going to be happening the next 2 Mondays. So next Monday we're going to be talking about plot twists and other fun, really fun stuff like metaphors, similes, imagery, which is fancy language basically. And then the week after that we're going to talk about finding inspiration, which is like finding ideas or finding motivation to find ideas. So that's going to be the next 2 weeks. And your reading recommendation is basically like a reading challenge this time. It's not a specific book, but I want you to go to the library or maybe to your own bookshelf and find a fairy tale retelling. And I just want you to do that to prepare yourself for the next 2 weeks, because we're going to be talking a lot about magical things. And in the Finding Inspiration week, we're going to be talking about that. So I want you to find a fairy tale retelling or an actual fairy tale, and that's your reading challenge. And your project is to build a map. And so 2 weeks ago, you built your world and your setting, and I want you to remember that as you draw your map. If your world was a bunch of islands, then make sure there are a bunch of islands. If your world was the moon, make it look like a moon, or have fun with it. And on the back of the map, I want you to draw your main characters and sort of just get your brain spinning to see what they look like. So on your map, I want you to draw the beginning and the end of your story. Or if you remember your main problem or your main thing that the character has to defeat, that could be right before the treasure. And I want you to title your world at the very top, and if you want, you can decorate it. If you get a tea bag, you can get it wet and put it all over and let it dry, and then it'll look like a real map. If your parents let you, you can get a flame and torch the corners so it looks like it's an old map. Basically, if you remember the triangle, all the challenges and obstacles climbing up, you can draw those along the line from the start point to the treasure map. And that is your project for today. So have fun.